Welcome to the Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and bigz. He is Grindberg. I am bigz. We are here to talk about some wide receivers to be wary of. And this is our first show after the Combine. And breaking news, I just ran a 4.36 at the Combine. And with my size and weight, I have an RAS of 10. So I'm RB1 in the class.
You are the number one person in my class here, bigz. I knew you were going to run hot. I knew you were going to run fast. And yeah, way to impress. And we're going to have
4 minutes, 36 seconds in the 40.
blindfolded and backwards. I love it. Yeah, we're not going to spoil the Combine just yet because we're going to have our post-Combine reaction show probably dropping in a couple days here. So
this is Monday. We can't spoil anything, Mike.
Well, fair enough, but we can spoil our bus for 2025 at the wide receiver position, our early bus, and we each got three guys that we want to kind of tackle. Why don't you start us off, bigz, with your number three fade or bust, if you will, at the wide receiver position for 2025?
Okay, I'm going to say this one with caveats, and the reason that I have caveats is because I just made a joke about this video coming out after the Combine, but we are recording it before the Combine. So I don't know how Tet McMillan is going to fare at the Combine, and he may incredibly raise his draft stock, and a lot of people think that he's a wide receiver one immediately. But I want everybody to be wary because over on Keep Trade Cut, he is currently listed in the dynasty rankings as wide receiver 15. He hasn't played a snap yet. He is the wide receiver one, and we saw what happened with the wide receiver one last year. That was Marvin Harrison Jr. We had two top 10 wide receivers out of the rookie class. That was Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. There are a couple of analogs analytically in this class to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., namely in the bodies of Trey Harris and a couple other guys. So for you to get Tet McMillan in early drafts, you're going to have to pay a heavy price. And there's no saying that he is going to come out and be an immediate impact wide receiver. A lot of people made that mistake with Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. And I don't want you guys to make the same mistake. So this early in the preseason, we need to kind of hedge our bets on rookie wide receivers. Stick with the veterans, especially since we're in redraft leagues, and it's not likely that wide receivers are going to be hitting in the top 10 again. There will be, but sussing out who it's going to be is harder than we think. So just, pump the brakes on Tet McMillan for now. Who knows? In August, I could be like saying Tet McMillan to the moon. Depends on landing spot, all that stuff. But for now, he's a rookie wide receiver. Let's just chill.
Yeah, and I love the awareness there, bigz. We're at a time in the season here where everybody's got these question marks about these rookies, and parading them into just the rookie class is one thing, but when you start weaving them into the actual NFL and getting them into these players, especially at his price right now, there's so many question marks about where he's going to land, all that kind of stuff. So definitely someone to keep your eye on, and there's some red flags about him as well. So way to point them out. I'm going to talk about it.
Don't forget that when we're talking about this stuff, we're talking about value. We're not talking about players' abilities, their talent levels, their performance, whatever. We're talking about value. And so I just wanted to shove that in there.
Yeah. And what I really like that you had done there is you started off the show with a youngster, a guy that's a rookie. I'm going to go about the other spectrum here. That's why bigz and I really like to balance each other out in everything we do. And I'm going to talk about Davante Adams, who on ESPN right now is being drafted as the wide receiver 11. And he's been a fixture at, at the top of the wide receiver rankings for a number of years now. But as we approach 2025, his value is starting to look more like a gamble than a sure thing. As the wide receiver 11 on ESPN draft boards, his ranking may be a little bit too optimistic with the multitude of factors that could lead to his decline. There's uncertainty surrounding his future with the Jets, the potential fallout of Aaron Rodgers. We know that departure is already set in stone. The wear and tear on his body at age 32. There are growing concerns about Adams' ability to remain that elite fantasy asset. He played 14 games only in 2024, his lowest number of games since 2018. He averaged only 15 points per game, which is a notable drop of his average of 19 he posted in 2023. It signals that decline. His yards per game fell to 74. He only scored 6 touchdowns. His average depth of target dropped to 8.3. So he's undoubtedly talented, but I think he's at the stage of his career that he's going to be on the decline. He could still be a top 24 guy, but right now he's being ranked as the wide receiver 11 on in ESPN leagues, and that's just way too rich for my blood, Biggs. What do you say about that?
Absolutely too rich. And I'm a Davante Adams lover. Now there is a non-zero chance that there's a 99% chance that he's not a Jet next year. But there's a non-zero chance that he is a 49er and the 49ers trade away Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Both of those things have been rumored. And Davante Adams, who is from the Bay Area, he's from Palo Alto. Shout out East Palo Alto High School and their wide receiver 1, Jock Peterson. But Davante has said that he wants to go home. He wants to go home to the Bay Area, and that would put him in San Francisco with the 49ers. Now, he was a part of a team last year where he came in midseason. He was coming off of an injury. He kind of took over as the wide receiver 2 in that offense, but he was still the wide receiver 2 in that offense and not necessarily the primary wide receiver. Garrett Wilson was the primary wide receiver. If he goes to San Francisco, the only person he has to beat out is Ricky Pearsall and whoever the 49ers decide that they want to take in the draft, which is not out of the realm of possibility. Wait for his value to drop out of the 11 spot. Wait for it to drop into the 20s and maybe into the late 20s or early 30s, and then watch him cook. So yeah, like at this point right now, don't be doing it. But there is a chance that he has a sunny future in San Francisco, especially if he goes there and they trade away Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and we're hearing now that Ayuk wants to trade as well. So a lot of stuff's happening there in San Francisco. So yeah, that would be a dream landing spot for him. And like you said, we are just outlining the values here, and right now, currently, that value is not there. So Biggs, who do you got as your number 2 wide receiver bust in 2025?
My number 2 wide receiver bust for 2025 is Indianapolis Colts wide receiver Michael Pittman. Now he's currently on sleeper at ADP wide receiver 15, and there is no indication that Anthony Richardson is going to have the leap that he needs to in year 3 to become the guy that's going to put Michael Pittman back into the range of being drafted in the top 15. Now, as I go through and look at everything, and have to go back to my sleeper board and everything, so bear with me for a second. I want to go over Pittman real quick. And in his history, he will be entering his year 6 season. He was wide receiver 17 in his second year, wide receiver 20 in his third year, wide receiver 41 last year. Those are all with 17, 16, and 16 games played. So it's not like he's been missing time with injury. He is a reliable guy to be on the field. But wide receiver finishes of 17, 20, and 41. But he's being drafted at ADP 15. Now, he did have a 13 finish, a wide receiver 13 finish in 2023. But that seems to be his absolute ceiling. So what you're doing if you're spending top 15 draft capital on this guy is you are asking for him to repeat the outlier season that he's had. He should be in that late teens, early 20s range, but it hasn't been apparent that without Joe Flacco, he can return to the target share and everything that he had before. So I'm a little wary on Michael Pittman moving forward. We need to bank on, Anthony Richardson having his finally breaking out, and also who their backup is. Because if Anthony Richardson continues his trend of missing time because of injury, the backup quarterback in Indy is going to be every bit as important as Anthony Richardson is. So we need to watch for the rosters to all be set and all that stuff. Right now is not the time to be drafting Michael Pittman at 15. Maybe in August we'll revisit it, but not right now.
Yeah, agreed there. I don't like that quarterback situation right now. It's been so up and down, and that is a hefty price to be paying for a guy that really only has hit that once in his career and was with a totally different quarterback. So, yeah, great call on Michael Pittman there, bigz. Now, a guy that I'm going to talk about next is a wide receiver that has been dynamic for years, and it's been kind of like the story of the situation here. I talked about Davante Adams. Now I'm going to talk about Tyreek Hill. But on ESPN right now, he's being, ranked as the wide receiver 17. Still, to me, that is still quite a bit of a risk to be taken when we consider what 2024 looked like for him. He did not look as explosive. It didn't look like the same Tyreek Hill in years past. He was hindered with some injuries here, and now he is entering his 30s. The combination of his injuries, the aging, might spell trouble for his value in 2025. There's some murkiness about his situation in Miami. He asked for, he mentioned that he wasn't going to be playing for them again, and now he's rescinded that. So his situation has been riddled with uncertainties here. He only had 1,000 yards in 2024, his lowest total of his career since his rookie season. That's a steep decline.
Crazy,
What's that?
He only had 1,000 yards.
Yeah, only.
That's crazy,
isn't it? But I mean, the year before he had 1,700, so that's a
Right,
huge slide down. 6 touchdowns. He had 15 in 2022. 11.9 yards per reception. That was a career low for him. Only 81 receptions for Tyreek Hill. I know these are all benchmarks we're talking about, but we're talking about a guy that's going to be drafted as a wide receiver, two, with, a lot of leagues. People are going to be steaming him up when, they see his situation might not have changed or whatnot. So we're going to have to really see how the next 2 to 3 months play out for Tyreek Hill and the Miami Dolphins. And he's a guy that I'm going to be really, really concentrating on and making sure I'm not investing. I may have some shares of him, but right now I'm going to be proceeding with caution.
I'm sensing a couple themes here in the guys that we're talking about. So once we finish our number ones, I'll go ahead and talk about those themes. But where are we, Mike?
We are here. We are the Fantasy Sports Advice Network, and you can find us on our website. You could find the Fantasy Football Advice Network there, as well as the Fantasy Baseball Advice Network and the Fantasy Basketball Advice Network. We are growing, and it's a great community where, like-minded people can go and just hang out and talk ball or puck or whatever object you're kicking or throwing around, because that's what we're going to be covering in the next couple of years. So be sure to follow us and get your pro membership.
Get your merch.
There we go. Yeah. Speaking of merch, check out our hats. Our great FSAN merch is now dropping, and you can find new stuff. Maybe some
also,
dynasty.
I want to remind everybody out there in Fantasyland, if you're already signed up for FSAN, go ahead and like and subscribe. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe and comment and all that stuff. Also, if you're not already a member at FSAN, go ahead and like and subscribe and comment on all that stuff.
There you go.
Nice. Okay, so I'm going to go with my number one early bust for 2025. This is a guy whose current ADP on Sleeper is wide receiver 6. And I did spoil his name a little bit earlier. I mentioned him a little bit earlier in the show. I am talking, of course, about the enigma that is Marvin Harrison Jr. He finished as wide receiver 30 last year in PPR leagues. He's 6'4", 205 pounds. He's got like the ideal, like he's super tall build. He's an X receiver, which means that he's going to line up on the outside. He, is the son of a Hall of Famer. He had incredible, profile coming out of Ohio State, being part of that Ohio State wide receiver farm. Josh Hartline, the wide receivers coach, just continues to pump him out. And he came out as the wide receiver 1 in everybody's rookie drafts, and he was touted highly in redraft and absolutely fell flat on his face. Now, there is one consistent thing that is going to be present in 2025 for Marvin Harrison Jr., and that is the fact that while he may be wide receiver 1 on the Arizona Cardinals, he's pass catching target number 2. And I don't mean that in terms of targets. I mean that in terms of ability to make catches. Kyler Murray does not throw the ball to his outside receivers very well. He hits Trey McBride often, and Trey McBride is elite because of it. But Kyler Murray struggles to get the ball on outside throws and deep throws, which is basically Marvin Harrison Jr.'s bag. So I've said it before, and I will say it again. As long as Kyler Murray is Arizona's quarterback, or let me rephrase it. As long as Kyler Murray is Marvin Harrison Jr.'s quarterback, Marvin Harrison Jr. will not live up to his potential as a top 12 wide receiver in the NFL. Don't draft him at wide receiver 6. Don't draft him at wide receiver 12. Don't draft him at wide receiver 20. He's not going to get there. We are looking at a guy who's going to need to break out later on in his career because of his quarterback.
Yeah, it's all the signs were pointing in that direction in his rookie year. Guys like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., look how they emerged. Ladd McConkey, for that matter, with most people had their quarterbacks ranked behind Kyler Murray headed into this season. So we're looking at.
And that's understandable because Kyler Murray is a fantasy points scorer at quarterback. That's not a quarterback that he's not necessarily a quarterback that is going to make his wide receivers better. Now, Brian Thomas Jr., he had a top 10 year behind Mac Jones to a certain extent. There was a lot of Mac Jones that he was catching. Malik Neighbors, that was a garbage quarterback situation, but they had quarterbacks that could get those guys the ball. Kyler Murray cannot get the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr.
And that is why we're fading him. Good call on that, bigz, until his price.
And Mike is gone, so he should be back, and we're going to go ahead and cut here, and then when he comes back in, he'll go ahead and edit the video and put himself back in it. But if he doesn't, and this just goes out raw, how are you guys doing? I'm kind of excited. I did get to go down to the Senior Bowl and watch a lot of action down there and scout a lot of the rookies, and I got to go to the Super Bowl, and I just booked my plane ticket to go to the NFL draft, so I'll be there representing and creating content. And start now.
I am back, and I don't know what happened. But I'm back now, and I'm going to talk about Deebo Samuel, whose fantasy value in 2025 is uncertain. I know, bigz, we've been fading him, especially you, over the last couple of years. You've never really been a big Deebo guy, and you kind of made me see some things last year about him that really made me not draft him in a lot of spots. And I was happy about that because his age is now creeping up. He's had an injury history that can't be ignored. Now he's got a potential change in scenery on the horizon, and Deebo Samuel is just going to be a risk in 2025. I think no matter where he lands, because of his name recognition, his stock has taken a bit of a hit due to his diminished role in 2024. He may not be the weapon he was in the past. He just had 51 catches, 670 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he was lackluster in the rushing department, which, helped his production in years past. He's been fighting that injury bug. His rushing totals dropped 9.1 rushing yards per game in 2024. That's his lowest mark. And we know what happens when that part of his game goes down. He's not that prolific elite wide receiver. And right now he's being drafted as the wide receiver 34 on Keep Trade Cut, which is, on ESPN, which is probably where he's going to be around, but I'm going to be staying clear about him until we know a little bit more about his situation. And I just don't think his situation is going to get any better in 2025. So I'm going to be staying clear of him regardless of where he lands. What about you, bigz?
Totally agree. And I mentioned earlier that I sensed a theme, and the theme is a lot of questions at quarterback. We have Tet McMillan, question at quarterback. We don't know what team he's going to be on at this point. Davante Adams, question at quarterback. We don't know what team he's going to be on at this point. Michael Pittman, we don't. There's a question at quarterback. Is Anthony Richardson going to be the guy to support Michael Pittman as a top 15 wide receiver? Probably not. Tyreek Hill had a bad season last year because Tua Tagovailoa was hurt a lot, and their backup wasn't capable. Marvin Harrison Jr., we know who his quarterback is. It's just bad quarterback play. And then Deebo Samuel. We don't know where he's going to go. Part of what scares me off even more about Deebo Samuel is that Brock Purdy is literally the most efficient quarterback in the NFL year over year. Highest fantasy points per drop back, highest DVOA, highest expected points per play, or per attempt, that kind of thing. And Deebo couldn't do it. If you're not going to do it with the most efficient quarterback in the NFL, what do you think you're going to do if you go to a situation where you have a rookie or a Russell Wilson or a Justin Fields or something like that? Like, what do you think is going to happen? So yeah, I was out on Deebo Samuel with a fantastic quarterback, and I'm even outer on Deebo Samuel, given the quarterback question at this point.
Yeah. It's a couple of veterans. You identified a couple of youngsters, which is really cool to see. So we had a really good blend here of busts that could potentially
My
happen.
head is so far up Dynasty's butt right now, and this draft season, that they are top of the mind.
Top of the mind, and it's top of the mind for a lot of our viewers. So it was nice to get a little bit of veteran presence there too. So good blend, bigz, you and I, like we always do, buddy. Great partnership here. And everybody, thanks for tuning into the Fantasy Forecast on the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Bigz, do it like we always do.
We hope you win.
We hope you win, folks. We'll see you next week. Peace.